And soon I'll hear.
This is a woman who is literally becoming more and more isolative. She's wheelchair bound. She hadn't sung in over 10 years because of the dementia. When she was put in the right setting, has the right music in front of her, then all of a sudden she slowly starts to engage in singing. She starts mouthing the words and singing very, very softly, and she engages this operatic voice that hasn't sung for over 10 years. So it's a very, very different approach than, let me just put a needle in your arm, because you really are capitalizing and utilizing the musical process.
My voice returned.
In a world gone mad, there's 21 kilohertz.
I don't know if you know this, but I cannot stop listening to Meatloaf.
I really didn't know that.
For some reason, I've got just those three songs, and we all know what they are. Just those. Well,
I know one of the
Meatloaf
three,
songs.
Paradise and the Dashboard Lights.
And then there's the other two.
I would do anything for love, but I wouldn't do that.
Exactly.
I've always wanted to know what that is that they would not do.
Well, if you must know, he actually says it
really?
at the end of the song. He said that I'd never cheat on you, which doesn't really actually ultimately make any sense. But
all right, anyway,
that's what it is. I can't get those three stupid songs out of my head, and that's what tonight's podcast is.
Yeah, well, music is a universal thing, oddly enough. It's everywhere, every country, every corner of the planet for the most part. I think I heard about one indigenous tribe in the middle of some remote forest somewhere that didn't have music. But aside from that, it is everywhere. But the other really cool thing about music is apparently it has healing powers. Yeah, I mean, honest to God, it can help people with autism. It can help people with dementia. It can help heal, soothe, calm, repair.
Gabby Giffords, as we're going to find out, part of her therapy, she loves Tom Petty, and it helps her speak again.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what tonight's show is.
Yeah, it's true. So Rachel Francine and her brother Andy Tubman are the co-founders of SingFit, which is an incredible story about a brother and a sister, Andy being the chief of Therapeutics and music, but basically a music therapist, and Rachel, who is the CEO with sort of more of a business acumen bend behind her, basically persevering and slugging through a mountain of the most incredible obstacles to create a company that makes the world a far better place and heals.
Yeah, and it's amazing because it hits kind of everything that we've been talking about over the run of this podcast. It hits music publishing. It hits payments. It hits who's allowed to use what. I found it really fascinating.
Yeah, entrepreneurship, perseverance, man. If you're looking for someone to look up to or as inspiration to accomplish that goal that you have not yet accomplished, meet Rachel and Andy. All right, well, anyway, thank you very, very much for doing this. So one of the things that I thought was absolutely fascinating, and this happens very rarely, is when you're able to combine something that you feel passionately about with something that's a business. And in your case, it not only fits that bill, but you're also a brother and a sister, and you actually are making the world a better place because you've brought to the table a technology and a methodology and a philosophy to help people with Alzheimer's, to help people with autism, with dementia, and found uses for music that I think we all might know about, but we really didn't know how it could be used and applied. And you created this incredible thing, which is actually having an impact on the world and helping people. And I was just blown away by that.
No, the whole thing was amazing. Why don't you just start at the beginning? Rachel, why don't you start? Tell us how you kind of started, or if you'd better start with Andy, go for it.
So one of the things to know, as you mentioned, is that Andy and I are brother and sister, and we have a father who was a serial entrepreneur before that term was even invented. He also happened to be an opera student. And when he was an opera student going between his basic training in New Jersey and his opera lessons in New York, he says that he was a lazy opera student and he could never remember the words. And in the opera, there's actually a guy who goes to the last rehearsal of an opera and learns where the opera singers are weak in their lyric, and then will go to that performance and actually prompt them the words of the song before they need to sing them. And my dad, prescient as he was in the 1960s, became obsessed with how can I have the opera prompter as a little electronic device device in my car with me so it can help me with my words as I go to my lessons.
So was an opera prompter a thing? I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
It was actually that they had a hood on the stage so that whether it's in a rehearsal or even in a performance, there could be a person that would literally spit out and cue the words for the singers where they were forgetting what they were thinking.
Yeah.
How in the world do you cue a person that you've forgotten the lines in the future that you don't know that you've forgotten yet because you're not there? And then how does the person hidden down below in some clamshell below the stage feed you a line that you can hear above your own opera singing?
Sounds like a Lucy episode.
Yes. Yeah, a Lucy episode it is. It ain't rocket science, right? But I think that if the person really knows the libretto well and has memorized the libretto, they know exactly where the singer is in that. And if they're doing some sort of run or something, they're not necessarily changing words that much. But typically, there's some space to cue in, and in other words, where the vocal stops, and then a good amount of space to cue a lyric, especially, if they're a professional singer and they dropped a beat or something, they'll be able to kind of pull themselves back in an opera of an hour and a half or 2 hours, in length where, those kinds of mistakes happen and the audience never knows it.
So my dad became obsessed with this and worked on the idea in different ways through the 60s and 70s and early 80s, and karaoke came in and really blew his mind. But what he was also really doing during that time was socially engineering his two children. And I have spent the last 20 years really working in technology. I started working on the internet in 1996 for a company called City Search, and for about 15 years really focused on how do you take brick and mortar products and turn them into these scalable digital solutions. So everything from ticketing to newspapers to auctions, but became disillusioned in that it always seemed like you were really eventually just creating a product so that Coke or Pepsi could advertise on it.
Yeah.
And I went back to school and got a degree in something called future studies, which is how, and strategic foresight, which essentially teaches you how to create long-term transformational change on multiple levels, so that I could really have a positive impact and use capitalism creatively. And at the same time, and I'll let Andy talk to this, Andy became a music therapist.
Wait, when you say you went into, you got a degree in music therapy, and this is going to sound really horrible on my part, I didn't know that really existed. Where does one go to get a music therapy degree, and what is it like? What do you have to study? How do you become qualified?
You take a lot of psych courses. You take a lot of music courses and competency courses, as well as scattered pieces of like biology and chemistry. There's kind of the core integration of where science meets music, and you have classes like receptive methods, and you start understanding how sound is interpreted, and you start to understand what it means if someone on the autistic spectrum can play a beat in time, but can't actually change the tempo of the beat or vary it at all, and what kind of emotional implication, what that means, that might mean emotionally, and what that might mean neurologically speaking.
Give us a little background also. I didn't realize till looking into this that music therapy is incredibly powerful, and I don't think anybody knows about it.
Right. Yeah. Music therapy is quite powerful, or can be. Recently, in the past 5 or 10 years, with neurologists really kind of getting on board and proving, how heavy, especially active music making, how heavy it is in terms of neurologically and how much of a whole brain workout active music making is. And they're able to map that now, as well as some of the press around music therapy with the tragedy of Gabriella Giffords being shot in the head, and them assigning a music therapist to her as one of their first team members, and her attributing, along with the rest of the team, but really, her singing Tom Petty and her singing protocols, Givers herself attributes to her speech rehab and recovery.
I sense with my unscientific study, there's skepticism in the general population at the idea that something as, quote, simple as music can be curative or helpful with someone like, Giffords, who gets shot in the head point blank. Music therapy is responsible for help restoring her cognitive abilities and being able to speak. Are there things to support that?
So she had left hemisphere brain trauma. Even when you can't speak, you can often sing. And so you use that singing to help catalyze brain plasticity in order to rewire where speech takes place in the brain.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I just find that fascinating. How is singing and speaking touching different parts of the brain?
Singing is taking place in multiple places in the brain.
When you sing, right, active music making, producing the music yourself, you're integrating and coordinating language centers, motor centers, planning centers, timing centers, subcortical, topical, short-term memory, long-term memory. You're really engaging the whole brain. To be able to express a song, it's really a unified experience for the brain.
They're just doing a lot of this research now. Nobody's 100% sure about how this works. They just know that it does work. But the challenge is that with only 6,000 music therapists, you don't even have enough people to work in speech therapy. And so what we do is we then say, okay, well, we know that singing as a tool works in these different areas. So for somebody with a traumatic brain injury, it can help restore speech. For somebody with dementia, it can actually help to regulate their neurochemicals. So what we did was take the app, which has the musical ability in it, so it replaces the need to be a musician to facilitate this process.
So your job in coming into this and speaking with Andy was providing a technological solution to be able to scale music therapy through the creation of an app which can be disseminated to whomever has like a phone or a hardware device, and then helping raise the money and build the infrastructure necessary to execute on the vision? Is that kind of the role that you ended up playing?
Exactly. And so it's the technology part of it, and then also working with him to say, okay, what are the best practices in music therapy for this particular application? And then how do we also scale that? So that the therapy itself can be implemented by people with no musical background.
In a nutshell, what did you come up with? Explain the app in a sentence. What's your elevator pitch for the app, just so we could totally understand it easily?
So what our app does in general is it digitizes an evidence-based music therapy technique that's been around for decades. And in real life, what happens is a music therapist will play a song and then prompt the lyrics of the song to a client right before they need to sing them. We are actually inserting an additional vocal line into this music. So when you watch a video of our technology in action, or when you use the technology itself, what you'll find is that the words of the song are actually prompted to you right before you need to sing them. So one of our challenges is that only somewhere between 1 in 40 and 1 in 100 songs actually has that space that you need. So it's not like we can just go and scoop up all of Sony's catalog, who's one of our partners. We actually have to go through that catalog song by song, first making sure that it works from a space perspective. We also make sure that as it relates to how we, to our current product, which is aimed at people 55 plus, that it's popular enough, for people from the era. And then especially in the case of looking, and then Andy's music therapy team and musicians look at all different kinds of musical elements to make sure that it's truly singable. So for example, country music can be a little hard for us because it's full of sadness and loss and desertion and all of these kinds of things. And so it's not exactly what you want to bring into a senior living community where your big goal is to elevate mood.
let's take a song like Singing in the Rain, just because it came to mind. If you determine that that song meets the criteria set for your patients, do you then do a recording of that song, or are you taking someone else's recording of that song? And just the instrumental version, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so on the instrumental side, we do both, actually. Sometimes we will use an existing re-record, and Andy, who you can talk to more about this as well, is definitely an audio perfectionist. So we went through several re-record companies before we found ones where we really felt that they had the sort of richness of musicality to really replicate the original masters. And then sometimes when we can't find a recording that we like, we actually have a studio in Nashville that we use. We have some great musicians in LA that we'll use for re-records, as well as we've started using an orchestra in Croatia, I think it is. Is it Croatia? We've started using an orchestra in Croatia every once in a while when we need to replicate strings or other sorts of things that are hard to do electronically.
Wow. I mean, this is fascinating. So the first thing you have to do is you have to go to somebody that controls rights to music, the composition, and you have to go through it to determine if there's any lyrics and melodies in there that have the right emotional tonality, the upbeat lyrics, and they'll be recognizable to people that are 55 and older. Then what you need to do is go and get instrumental versions of those songs, and if they don't already exist, you're just going to go and record your own version?
That is correct, with the exception that the very first thing we do is just make sure that it has the correct spacing, so that there's enough space in between the lyrics.
But what do you mean by spacing, and how is that utilized, and why is that important?
So there's a whole bunch of criteria that will allow a song to get to the point of actually me hearing it, right? And so there's a filtering system in that the team who's filtering and listening through songs has a checklist. There's a variety of criteria that the team is looking at to say, that's a rocker, that's a hit. And if we prompt that, someone pushes play, they're going to be able to spontaneously engage in a singing process. That's our goal, is so that it becomes all of this kind of back-end microscoping on the song is so that in the end, someone who's 74 taking care of their loved one with dementia is sitting there and they can simply download a song and push play and start singing as an exercise. Right, mood elevator, cognitive exercise.
Is there one song that was the perfect song that fit every criteria?
Well, I have to say, though Blueberry Hill does not have a solo section, it's pretty much a no-brainer for pretty much every audience. I mean, it's just part of the fabric of everything. You know what I mean? There's a handful of songs like that. We call them the canon songs, and it's these canon songs. And we're talking in senior world 55 plus, but these canon songs are the songs that we utilize and thread throughout a variety of playlists to create consistency and comfort for people. Obviously, because not everybody's musicians and singers, right? And so songs like When Irish Eyes Are Smiling, these kinds of songs, Blueberry Hills, which one?
Over the Rainbow.
Over the Rainbow.
So tell us about the music licensing. So in order to use music and do your own recordings, you have to get licenses. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what we did originally and what we're still working on is we went out, we hired some big lawyers, who had really deep ties in the music industry, and essentially we had to go out and craft entirely new music licenses because it's a new use for these songs. Was the legal the sort of legal road that we were on because we were inserting this prompting track in. So we actually had to go out and forge deals with every music publisher whose music we wanted to use. We were really fortunate. I'll give a little shout out to especially to Universal Music Group. They were the first people who signed on to this and gave us licenses to use the music. And then once we had done a deal with Universal, we were then able to go around to Sony and Warner Brothers and most of the big companies, get similar kinds of licenses. But then, one thing we learned on that road, which is, you guys will be very aware of, is that one song can be actually owned by multiple people. And so even if we got clearance, let's say from Universal on something that might require us to track down, the 33% of the song that's still owned by the estate of the writer and forge a deal with that person. So, we continue on this track of I still get very excited every time we get a new music list in from somebody. For me, finding more music for the app is one of the great treasure hunts of the business.
Andy, what has the result been? Have you been happy with the results of the software?
I mean, for sure. In terms of taking that software and utilizing it to scale through hundreds of communities, there was an aha moment for me after we trained. There's a company on the West Coast. It's a senior living company called Aegis, and they have approximately 30 communities up and down the West Coast. And we trained, all 30 communities. So it was like 65 people, 70 people in a week. And then all of a sudden, thousands of seniors are singing 3 times a week and moving rhythmically 3 times a week. And I'm in LA, right? So the idea of the scale was just like, wow, look what just happened. I can only see about 25 people a week if I'm really busting my butt, right? So that was the implementation of the software. To me, has a lot more relevance or impact to me than this functionality of the software is great. And Carlos, our head of operations, who really monitors that and pushes that through, does a brilliant job. But it's the implementation of it and how functional it is in the field that's so exciting.
Now, I was watching a video from your website of that woman singing. Just kind of explain it to someone that hasn't seen it. It's amazing. I mean, it kind of got to me. That to me was just like, how did that happen?
So this is a woman. So first of all, there's 2 women in the picture, and one is a caregiver who we trained in how to implement SingFit, but also in how to implement a singing process and what's the intent of that. What's her goal, the caregiver's goal in that for the client. Right? So she goes into this scenario with some tools and at least some understanding of what's the intent. And then she brings, an active music making, a singing process to the table. She gathers song preferences, which is key, right? For someone to keep doing it and someone to have this higher engagement level. And then she's working with a woman who used to be a singer. That's why part of that, it's kind of it's kind of a very dramatic example, right? Because she used to be a singer, and she hadn't sung in over 10 years because of the dementia. And what happened was that when she was put in the right setting, has the right music in front of her, then all of a sudden, from not singing, she slowly starts to engage in singing. She wasn't forced in any way, shape, or form, right? It's a big part of the training, because really you let the music will do all the work, right? It's just making sure that the caregivers don't get in the way, quite frankly. They want to be so enthusiastic, it actually can be very threatening to a patient who hasn't shared their voice, right? And so for the caregiver not to get in the way, she now understands that the actual Olivia is engaged in listening to the music, and then she starts mouthing the words and singing very, very softly to a song that she's loved and she's heard before. And then on the second session, right, she literally stands up. She's wheelchair bound, and she stands up holding on to the table because she told me that you have to sing from your toes, so I have to stand up to sing. Right? She's literally giving me voice lessons. This woman is just beautiful. And so she stands up and she's, engages this operatic voice that hasn't sung for over 10 years. And, the result of that is multi-layered.
It's amazing. Just watching the video, you can see in her eyes, you could see everything kind of working through. And then she just stands up, and it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, my favorite is she tells everybody to sing with her, right? And she wants people to engage with her in this kind of energy. And you have to understand, there's drama because she's such a good singer. But the thing that's so dramatic to me is that this is a woman who is literally becoming more and more isolative. Her energy levels are going down and down. The husband told us that she sleeps all the time, right? And now this is a woman who's standing up and getting everybody going and saying, come on, sing with me, right? So it's a very, very different approach than, oh, I'm coming in, let me put a needle in your arm, take some blood or your finger, and let me check your your blood sugar levels. It's a very different relationship that can be forged in this scenario because you really are utilizing the musical process.
No, I'm assuming that is exactly what you wanted when you set out to make the app, when you set out to make the service, that it would affect people like that one-on-one.
So in the event somebody who's listening would like to get in touch with you, what do they do?
Well, of course, they can come to our website, which is singfit.com. And there's various ways to get in touch with us from the website. They can email us. And we actually put our phone number. Not a lot of tech companies do this, but we put our actual phone number on our website because we want our customers and everyone else to be able to get in touch with us really easily. And then, of course, there's all the social media ways. Our handle on Twitter is We Are SingFit. It's the same on Facebook and Instagram. So there's a whole variety of ways these days to get in touch with us.
And if they want to utilize what you've created to help treat somebody, what do they do then?
So it depends on who they are and what they're looking to use SingFit for and who they're looking to use it with. If they are a loved one of somebody with dementia and they want them to be in a community that has our SingFit Prime program, they can give us a ring and we can let them know. They can go to singfit.com, which is our website, and our phone number is there. And then if there's folks out there who are interested in doing research with us, we are very research-oriented this year, and so they can also come to the website and either shoot us an email from there or give us a ring.
As I sit here and listen to you, the thing that blows me away more than anything is the amount of determination and grit, for lack of a better word, to execute on this vision. The number of moving parts you have here is insane in a very positive way. I mean, the building of the app in and of itself as a piece of technology, identifying and analyzing music. We haven't even gotten to how to deal with the licensing of the music or what sort of money you have to pay back for it. There's just so many barriers here. And for whatever it's worth, if anyone ever tells me that they can't do something, you now have become the role model I'm going to point to say, yes, you can. It's unbelievable.
Yes. Well, thank you.
But essentially, you're also taking music and you're kind of trying to re-inject some value into it.
One of our goals at SingFit is really to, from a financial perspective, revalue music in society. So, there's this sort of, post-Napster world where everybody just wants to download music for free. And to some extent that, is devaluing the contributions of these great musicians and artists who write and perform these songs that can help us in so many ways. And so one of the things we're looking to be able to do is to say, look, it can cost $300 a year in a Numenda prescription, which is sort of the best-in-class dementia drug right now, that's never really been proven to really help people with dementia. It maybe delays the onset a little bit, but it does nothing to help treat or cure, any aspects of dementia. including increasing quality of life. But if we can take, Frank Sinatra and Bob Dylan and Ella Fitzgerald, we can have better effects for a tenth of the price using music. But we really want to be able to show that comparison, that look, music has real financial value in the world today.
Sing with me, sing.
Wow. Is that
21 Kilohertz is sponsored by Audium. Audium gets songwriters, composers, and music publishers paid for the digital use of their music. If it streams on Spotify, Rhapsody, Tidal, YouTube, or is downloaded on iTunes, Amazon, or any other digital music service, you deserve to get paid the money you earned. Audium works for Metallica, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jason Mraz, Jimmy Buffett, and thousands more. To get started, simply go to audium.com, provide your information, and collect your money. Audium. AUDIAM. Get paid for the use of your music.
Opening narration provided by Karin Gilfrey. Need the perfect voice for your corporate videos? How about some narration for your year-end presentation? What about a scintillating voice for your in-house voicemail system? For more information, go to KarinGilfrey.com. That's CarinGilfry.com. All music on 21 kilohertz is provided by freeplaymusic.com. Freeplay Music is an online searchable music library anyone can use. At Freeplay Music, you can search and license songs to use in your video, your project advertisement, your business presentation, your movie blockbuster, your video game, or your kitty cat fashion show. Anything else you can think of. Tonight's music was Brain Trip, a courageous and adventurous track from the album Electrified, Volume 11.
Which is
now we have a lot to talk about, Jeff.
Don't get me started about Battlestar.
I want to smoke a cigar like Starbuck.
Well, that's what my question was. Are we talking old Cylons or new Cylons? Like, which ones are we talking about here?